faith feels like you're falling into the arms of something greater, or into the knowledge or wisdom of something greater than yourself. You can call it God, source, universe, whatever. And then trust is like, I believe in myself.
Or I believe in God.
Or I even believe that someone's behind me. Or I believe someone's around.
There's an ironclad knowing
so
in the word trust for me that just feels so rooted.
It does. It feels kind of like it has a shape to it.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Totally. Yo, what's up, everyone, and welcome to this week's very special episode with one of my favorite human beings on the planet, Miss Danette May. Danette's an incredible entrepreneur, a brilliant coach, a thought leader, an author, a mom, an inspiring figure, and just all-around magical human being who I've known for years. We've had her on the show a few times. In fact, she was one of my earliest guests. And we got to just dive in, and we skipped the pleasantries, if you would. You know, I love having my dearest friends on the show because we can just drop in and go deep. And this episode was all about creation and manifestation, and how do we actually learn to listen and lead from our hearts, and why that's so important, and so much more. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. And without further ado, here is the amazing Ms. Danette May. Enjoy. Danette. Hello.
Oh, this is so fun to be here with you.
Welcome back. It's been years since we've had you on my show. I know I've been on yours.
Oh,
was
I on your show?
You were on my show like years ago. It was like after we first met, back in like 2018.
Oh,
when your
that's
book
right. It was right. It was through Zoom,
when
right?
When your book was coming out.
That's right.
And remember we met at Baby Bathwater. We had like the most epic drop-in, like soul sister, soul bro. I was like, who is this human?
That's how I felt.
And then like 2 weeks later, I'm at your book launch party in New York.
Oh, that's
right.
My gosh. It's like all coming back to me.
It was like so fast. It was like so fast. And then we've just been in each other's orbits, just cheering each other on through so many expansion cycles.
Yes.
You know?
Truly.
And one of the things that we were just talking about before we hit the record button was just how this process of growing into who we are meant to be requires us to shed so much of what we are not.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'm really curious to hear just like your relationship to the expansion cycle. Has it gotten easier to let go as you've grown, and speak to that? Because I believe that most people are afraid of growth because they're afraid of that.
Yeah. I think that comes with time, is like when you get to witness really hard things in your life, you start to see the actual cycles. And I'm noticing the things that happened 7 years ago, the transitions I was in 8 years ago, are happening again. They're just different, but it's very similar. And it's an opportunity. And what happened for me 7 to 8 years ago, a lot of times when we're put into the washing machine, I call it the washing machine of life, where you're like just getting tumbled, or it's the refiner's fire too. It's like the heat's on, you can't catch a breath. It's just circling, and you're wondering when the door is going to open. And then the door gets open, but you're soggy, wet, and then you got to hang out to dry. It's like you realize that's when out of that chaos, like Napoleon Hill said, comes equal or greater good. And I always have found that it's not equal good, it's greater good. And it's up to you to decide how you're going to dry, and then what your use is going to be now that you've cleaned off. And, you know, now I'm also realizing I'm in this new phase. You asked me earlier before I think they pressed play, was about what's my word right now, and it's polarity, because I've been now invited into something that happened to me maybe 12 years ago I was facing off with, and then also 20 years ago. And now it's like seeing it generationally happening with my kids. I'm like, oh, I've got some clearing to do.
Oh.
And I'm like that polarity of like, oh, okay, I get to look at this and clear even more within myself, because I've done a lot of work, but I'm like, oh, there's a little bit more. And I just know it's all for my good. So that does help, because you know it's for your good.
Oh, what's so powerful about what you just said is, and I just want to honor the way that you were able to see the truth of the mirror in your kids. Mm-hmm. You know, you're like, I thought I worked through this. I thought I'm clear of this. And then you see it happening to your children, and you're like, oh no, this is mine. It's like you taking responsibility for it, and you not leaving it to chance of like, oh, this is something that's out there. It's like, no, like this is mine. And I feel a tremendous level of power
Yeah.
in that declaration, in that choice to view the crisis or the challenge or the flavor of adversity through that lens, because it almost puts you back in the creator seat
Yeah.
as opposed to the victim.
Oh yeah, it does. It's for me to choose how I sift through it, how I dry, how I navigate this. And so 20 years ago, Danette handled things a certain way, and I'm committed to handling it different now. And like things will recycle. Things just recycle. And you get to decide, am I going to show up the same way or am I up leveling and doing things different?
It's like the upward spiral. You know, like I've always seen growth as like, okay, like you go through one cycle of growth, you hit, level 27 boss, but the boss is a similar flavor, right? It's your soul curriculum.
Yeah.
I feel like we all came into this life with a set of lessons we were put here to learn.
Yep.
Especially if we're on an awakening path.
Oh, for sure. If we choose that.
If we choose the awakening path, you're going to continue seeing the same sort of flavors of challenge. But, one layer is level 27, and then you kind of grow through. All of a sudden you get to level 52, and it's like the same boss.
Kind of flavor. Yeah. I see.
Like, the flavor of it's very similar, but like you're more evolved. You have more tools. You have more capacity. Therefore, you can release more.
Totally. Or make different choices, or like I love when you say release, because I think to me, when I hear the word release, I think of not so much I've released, but I'm surrendering, and I don't even know if that word is the right word, but it's almost like, how we grab something so tight, it's like letting it go, because now that once you've let go, you can fall into something greater. Yeah.
Yeah, and the falling into something greater is that level up.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you resonate with this, like I feel like in the beginning of my personal development awakening journey, it was a lot of the doing.
Oh, sheesh.
Like how much can I do? How much meditation
Especially
can I do?
if you grew up to be a hard worker, you're like, I'm the best doer ever.
If you're an entrepreneur, if you're and it's the curse of being a successful entrepreneur.
Because it worked before.
Everything that worked, right, got you what you wanted.
Totally.
So you bring that same mindset into this domain of unraveling, but the doing gets in the way of the being. And the being is actually where the higher level bosses require you to play. It's like you can't beat this boss with just pure will, with just pure strength, with just pure intellect. You have to let go and access something bigger.
And it's often not seen. Or maybe even known. It's just you have to trust in the nothingness.
Trust and there's I've been really playing with this distinction between even faith and trust. Like faith is like this, almost you're falling back into a power that's not yours. And then trust is something that's like almost like yours. It's like I trust in my in my understanding of forces unseen. I trust in the way I navigate.
I can understand that. That's really cool.
But then faith is a required muscle to build in order to have trust.
Yes. It's so interesting. When you're talking, I have like an analogy. It's like faith feels like you're falling into the arms of something greater, or into the knowledge or wisdom of something greater than yourself. You can call it God, source, universe, whatever. And then trust is like I believe in myself.
Or I believe in God.
Or I even believe that someone's behind me. Or I believe someone's around.
There's an ironclad knowing in the word trust for me that just feels so rooted.
It does. It feels kind of like it has a shape to it.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Totally.
Yeah.
But I've been noticing as I continue growing, like it is the reason why I feel like I keep getting dealt larger and larger capacities to hold. Whether it's in the form of crisis, like, whether I call in challenge and adversity and crisis that feels like I'm clearing generational traumas, things that weren't even from my lifetime, or I'm calling in greater levels of service and leadership and opportunities to give back. It's like the more I anchor into resource beyond my physical body, beyond what Raj can do, and I'm like, oh, I have so much more because I'm connected to so much more. It's like, it requires that let go, because you're not actually even the one solving the problem. I don't know if that, it's like, it's almost like I find at least like the more I let go, like the universe is actually solving things for me. I just may not like the way it's doing it, which is my ego being attached to a certain way or getting a certain outcome. But truly, like, it's like I've been really tuning into trusting that like there's something greater than me that brought this in, and therefore something greater than me is going to solve it.
It's really interesting because I feel like I look at it a little different, but I love that because I think that actually is true too. But I always think that I'm creating the scenarios. So I always ask myself, do I want to time jump to another scenario?
That's a cool, play with that for me. Like I want to hear about that.
Yeah. So I don't ever go, oh, it's going to get solved. I'm almost like, I'm obviously choosing this. So what do I choose instead? And then I will do a thing where in my body to move to a new scenario. So I'll give you an example. This is recent. We were just flying to Spain. And anybody who's flying to anywhere where you think you're going to go somewhere fun and romantic, you're like, want it to be fun and romantic all the way there, right? And we are flying first class. We're heading first to Frankfurt. Everything's going amazing, like you got to fly, you're eating yummy food, you have champagne. We get to the airport in Frankfurt, and all of a sudden we're in this lounge, and there's like a naked Indian man. I don't even know. I laughed that he was Indian because I don't know if it was cultural. But he was standing naked in the bathroom that I could clearly see. And another man was brushing his teeth and gagging himself. That's just an example. I was just like, that's odd. That's weird. Okay. And my husband's like, what is going on in this lounge? And there was people fighting. And I saw this man hit this little girl in there, his own daughter. And I was like, what is, like, my visions right now are really weird. And we were like, let's get out of this lounge. So we get out of the lounge and we literally come across, trying to cross through the airport, this massive like stop of people. And all these people are like jammed packed, and some are trying to go up the escalator. And there's a guard up there and he's like, stop. And people are, the escalator's going. So people are starting to fall back. And I realized, I'm like, oh, we're in an energy vortex right now. I don't know what else to call it, that we don't want to be in. So I looked at my husband. I was like, this is really weird. Like what we're witnessing right now and experiencing right now doesn't feel good. A little girl getting hurt in the lounge, like by her father, which is bringing up weird stuff for me. Man naked, which I'm like, that's weird. Why is he standing there naked? And then just weird scenes, people falling down the escalator, yelling at each other, chaos going on. I was like, close your eyes for a moment, because we're in the crowd. Like people are all around us. It's like people are pushing each other back. I'm like, close your eyes. We need to like time jump for a minute. And we need to like visualize what we really want. And so we both just closed our eyes in that second. And I do this kind of thing, which my husband and I know it's hard for me to explain other than we go in and we see what we want and we pull back. Like it's the surrendering that you were talking about, or this faith. And all of a sudden the crowd just started moving, and then all of a sudden we were out of it. And then we never witnessed another thing like that again. And I've noticed that when I get into a situation where I'm like, that's not what I'm feeling, like this is really weird. Where am I? Why am I experiencing this? I can pull back, and then it's like almost like the seed parts. It's really interesting. And I'm realizing we have all these doors. I've been shown it in dreams. We have, and I don't know how else to word it other than doors for people, because I've seen it different in dreams. We're choosing every portal, every door we're going through. So if you don't like what you're seeing, it doesn't mean it's not for you, because everything's for you and everything's a choice. That's my belief system. And so even though I'm going through hard things right now in my life, things I would label hard and like probably my worst fears, I probably created them because they are my worst fears, for one. And two, I can go, okay, I'm going to take the lesson from this door, this angle I went in, and I'm going to move to the next one once I've got the lesson. And honestly, it's not like I'm being impacted by it. It's just a knowing of something. So I get to walk through another door.
Thank you so much for bringing back the awareness of the power of our awareness.
Yeah.
Like it's like we have such power to shift our experience of what's happening.
Yeah.
And also the dance between letting go of control of how it shifts.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like the dance. It's almost like, I think if I could even blend everything, it's like like your experience of what was happening, which is there was like this kind of almost like bing, 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 all these different experiences that were negative or projections of a fear or an insecure or something that was present, maybe not present, something maybe you felt so good. This comes back to like lobstering up. Like we were talking about this idea of lobstering up, like when we're growing, and like I've actually felt like when I feel the best and the safest is when all the noise starts to show. It's like, that's when like, it's like, there's a
when the noise starts to show.
Like I always felt like when things are absolutely amazing and I feel my absolute best is when the next layer of growth comes and the next opportunity to practice my practices. It's like there's another opportunity. And so like that's kind of how I feel your story. It's like you're feeling so good and then these things are showing up and it's like an opportunity for you to integrate something that you know to be true.
Yeah, because it's crazy. Like you can actually do this stuff. Say, I'm going to choose another door. I'm going to pull myself back. You're not willing another door. You're not pushing any people out. And literally the seas will part. I watched it at another event too. We were at a Tony Robbins event and there's like thousands of people in the audience and it's day one. He's telling everybody like, find your, what does he call it when he's like, you find your stance or your energy? It's like you get to choose who you are and like your energy, right? And that's the whole message. And that night we have to leave. And what happened is everybody was checking into the hotel at the same time, thousands of people next to the conference center. And so people were shoved in the lobby of this hotel out the back door. And at first everybody was kind because we just came out of Tony Robbins. And they're trying. They were understaffed. I don't know why they weren't ready for this, but it just was what it was. And we're standing in the middle of it. And we're like, it's going to be hours, not 30 minutes to an hour. This is hours before we're going to even get through this. Like and then people started getting angry. So I'm fine standing for 20 minutes, but then people were starting to like get mean, and I could feel the tension because it's late. Everyone's tired, and they're realizing this is going to be hours. So I did the same thing. I was like to my husband, I'm like, pull back, do the thing. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the woman behind, I was almost like afraid a little bit because the woman behind the desk looks at me and goes, come here. And she goes, let me get you squared away and I'll take you out this back way to get to your room. Why would she do that other than I was creating a new reality?
I'm so grateful you're bringing this up because it's actually reminding me. I'm like having a few flashbacks to a few memories where like that I've experienced similar things.
Yeah.
Maybe not intentionally.
Yeah.
But like and I'm tuning into like what was about those states. Like it's almost like I was connecting to like a field of infinite possibility. Of like, all right, I'm just gonna connect to a field of like magic and then just plant my wishes in the air.
Yes.
And just connect and then let go of the attachment. But there's like this energy of magic. Energy of infinite possibility, energy of manifestation. I mean, like I just realized that like this is like, I mean, I'm curious, like is this something that you like when did you learn this or recognize that this power to create, manifest, to shift timelines, to change reality was something that you could do the second you decide to? Yeah,
I think it's over time. Because I think I was always studying it and what other people were talking about. Like I loved researching this concept and then probably practicing here and there. I do have to say, like, let's just use that lobby example at Tony Robbins. There were other people because maybe it's not better that I get called out and moved to another room. For me, that was better. But there were people there was like, not a lot. There was like one group playing cards. Do you think they were having a better experience? Oh, yeah. And they created that reality of playing cards. They were probably fine. They didn't care if they're there for 2 hours. In all of it, I bet all that noise was gone. But I'm starting to see more and more. Like I will go into scenarios where it's really odd. Like, well, I'll give you another one. So I know that we're creating everything. I know that we're sometimes in these timelines where there are all these people around, but they're in a different timeline than us. And I'm also seeing that this is happening and it shows up because how are we so divided as people and the way we're seeing life? I think people are literally experiencing a different timeline. And I've seen this in real time multiple times, and they've been kind of more restaurant experiences. For example, we were at this high-end resort. There there was some people around at this high-end resort, but it had like 6 different restaurants on it. And I wanted to eat at this Chinese restaurant. And I called and they were like, oh my gosh, I don't think we can get you in because it's just packed tonight. And I was like, well, if anything opens up, my family and I would love to get into this restaurant. And she was like, well, if you come around 6, we might be able to get you a table. We're like, okay. So we show up. There's not one soul. I'm not even joking to you. One soul in that restaurant. And thankfully, I had my family with me to back me up or what I thought I was crazy. And she's like, so sorry, it's kind of busy. And I was like, what is happening right now? And my family's looking, she takes us to this small table for 2 that's like right at the front, like a cocktail table. And she's like, let me see if I can get another chair for you, as if that whole restaurant was full of people. And my family and I are looking at each other and we're like, every table's empty. And so I'm like, I think we're in a timeline. Like, we didn't realize it at the time. So then I say to her, I said, do you mind if we sit at a different table? Like that one right there, which was like a normal size table that's completely empty because every table was. And she goes, let me see. I'm like, really? And then she goes, yeah, we can get you there. And she sits us at that table, but all the staff is moving quick through this restaurant. Slowly more people came, but not by any means of being busy. We were there for 2 hours. That place never packed out. And every time they came to our table, they acted like this place was so busy and they were so sorry that they were taking.
What do you think was going on there?
I think there were people in there that we could not see. We talk a lot about New Earth. We talk a lot about timelines. We talk about these frequencies that we hold on, that we're creators. I'm being shown and thankfully other people are with me, being shown these things too. So I don't think I'm just making them up on my own, that there's got to be other timelines going on, and people possibly in this room, we call them spirits, or hanging out doing their thing that we cannot see. There's got to be other timelines going on. So if that's the case, then we can create whatever timeline we want to be in. So if you're witnessing or experiencing something that you truly don't want to, I'm not saying that I think it's bad to witness things that are dark and hard. I think actually I get to up a level. Some of us are actually choosing that, but we're actually choosing it at all times. And we can jump into another one at any time. And I'm learning that with time, and I'm getting finite examples of it, like that restaurant. And I've had multiple like that, not just that example, where I'm like, they're acting like there's all these people around, but there's not. Or I'll go into a restaurant, have the best seat in the house, and the worst seat of the house is next to me. There's nobody else in there. This just happened in Spain. And the couple can sit wherever they want, and they come and they sit right next to us when no one's in there at the worst table in the house, no view. I'm like, I think they're in another timeline, and somehow I'm witnessing them.
What do you feel like this chapter of expansion is pulling you into? It seems like you're actually being shown so many different things, and so many. And maybe there's even like crisis. Like, let's say there's crisis happening, but there's also like this incredible new awareness and gifts that are like coming online for you. Like, what are you interpreting all of this to mean for
That's
your
a great
evolution?
question, and I don't know. Other than it does make my life better, I get to pull back and walk through a crowd. I don't like being jammed in a crowd, or I get to have really beautiful experiences in life. But I don't know, other than I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this more. I don't know if other people I don't know how, if I talk about it, if it's really going to land unless someone experiences it. But I don't know. I guess,
what would walk me through a direct, if I wanted to put this into practice, immediately.
Okay, let's say, give me a scenario that you would be in that would make your blood boil or just be a big pet peeve. For me, it's crowds or people pushing against me or people getting angry. I can feel the agitation of humans. That's why I brought up those ones, because those are my agitations. What would be something for you?
Ooh. Does it have to be an in the moment thing, or can it be a an overarching scenario that might be
just give me a scenario and then I will role play with you what I would have you do. So tell me where you're at that's annoying or you're experiencing something. And maybe it's something you've already experienced.
What's annoying? Life's pretty amazing right now.
Well,
I'm like,
you know how we have just little triggers of annoyances? Like, I'm fine to be waiting in line at an airport. It's not like I was going to die, but I can jump into another one.
but I'm also realizing that it's interesting that we're talking about this because I guess the annoyance that I had was my old neighbor
Yeah.
was really loud.
Okay, this is good. Okay,
and we didn't
draw
have
the scenario.
and we didn't have sound they're building out the soundproof stuff now in the apartment, but when I got here this dude would be blaring music at 2-3 in the morning.
Okay, and you
loud.
can't get sleep.
I couldn't get sleep, and I'm just gonna tell you what happened for me. I tuned in to us. I was like, okay, I just want the most harmonious situation of this going away, and he ended up moving 2 weeks after I showed up.
Okay, well, you created it then.
So that's
You're
what I'm
already
saying.
doing it.
That's what I'm saying. I'm
You're doing
realizing
it.
I'm doing it, but I don't know what I'm doing. So if you have a process, I'm curious
I wonder
you
if
could,
everybody's way of doing it is slightly different. All I know is what I know. So I don't. It sounds like you're doing it actually, because the odds of him moving.
That's what I'm saying. I was and now that you're saying this, I'm legitimately I remember looking at Natalie. I was because we were both in pain. It was this is loud.
Yeah,
we could not sleep.
And if you value your sleep, it's an annoyance.
And I was genuinely okay, I really just really want this to shift. And I was feeling it and sitting with it and praying over it. And that was
sitting with it. You didn't react. You sat with it. You prayed about it. So you wished upon a different outcome.
I wished upon an outcome that was harmonious for all parties involved. So it wasn't I was creating something.
Yep.
It was almost he would get the best situation. I would get the best situation. So it wasn't me. And I feel I've been doing this in many, wow, Danette, holy frick. You're helping me. Maybe this is something I've been doing. And
it's when you realize you're going to tap into a deeper power because you're doing it already.
Wow. Yeah. I've been doing this with whether it's partnerships or investments or anything like that. It's I don't want to actually convince you to do anything. I just want to create the environment where you're I want to be a part of this. It's different. It's still the same outcome of us growing together, but it's not it doesn't feel like I'm willing my way.
Yeah.
It feels like there's a field of possibility that I'm tapping into, a timeline.
Yeah.
There's
lots of ways to say it. We say timeline, but it's a field of possibility.
I call it infinite possibility.
It's infinite possibility.
It's there's infinite possibilities, and I'm okay, I'm going to tune into the most harmonious possibility and be as daring as I can with how this whole thing can happen, and then just revel in awe when it does.
Yes. And you're doing it. That's exactly it. You are not wishing ill on anyone, because I actually believe that brings a different frequency. So you're looking for love. There's love in the frequency you're describing. Love is the most potent frequency of manifesting. So there's that. You're pulling back instead of just being I'm going to bang on the walls, or I'm going to blast music at noon when he's actually sleeping the next day. I'm going to get back at him. You're pulling back. And I call it pulling back because it's almost I always think of an eagle. They always talk about eagles flying higher and then the other, birds can't peck at them and go after them like they do hawks. They pull higher to get a better view. And it's if I'm in a situation that's actually aggravating and it's real, people are pushing or arguing, or yours is music, you pull back, and it sounds like you did that. You sat with it. You called it sat with it. But I bet that created this, I'm going to pull up.
Spaciousness.
Yeah, spaciousness. So you're creating this I'm going to pull out of this irritant in my body and just pull up, and I'm going to intend harmony, or I'm going to intend whatever the thing is, but you're not saying I want the best for me and not him. I didn't know. Mine was irrelevant with anybody else. I just wanted it to disperse. I wasn't wishing any ill on anyone. I think that's the thing is like you're pulling up and then you're basically feeling into, and you might not have like, I want him to move out. You probably didn't say that. You just said, I want harmoniousness. And then it worked out that way. Or you might have had a conversation with him. It might have gone a lot of different ways, but it would have gone harmonious.
Totally. And that's the thing. It's like, I'm realizing, God, man, I need to integrate this conversation. It's a good thing we're doing dinner afterwards. Because I need to like sit with this, because it's like,
yeah.
Like
so I think if someone's listening, they should look at their own lives of where they've done this, because everyone has done it. Everyone has done this, whether they're aware of it or not. Yeah, or they can start to practice it.
It's like, and have fun with it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, this is like you playing with life.
And no one's going to die. Like, you're playing with it. No one's going to die from like hearing music at 3 or 4 in the morning. You might be annoyed. No one's going to die being in a crowd with agitation. No. So just know that you get to play with it.
And I think play is an important frequency.
Yeah.
Right? Because like I'm finding that the more I start to realize that I'm in a game, that life is a game, that life gets to be played with, she starts to play back with me.
Yeah.
And it becomes this playful ascension, as opposed to it being like I have to, and that's, I feel like more of where I'm at now in my creation cycle. Like instead of it being like I need to hustle or push or make things happen, I feel like I'm more in like a playful,
that's beautiful,
dance where I'm like, okay, like how can we play together? How can we make this really fun? How good can this get?
Wow.
And the courage to ask that question has taken me a long time. But now I'm at this point where like, it's like, okay, like if I'm going to be doing this, like, can we make this playful? And can we look, and I think this is a big part of having things to be grateful for.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like when you're operating in that frequency of like, wow, there's so much magic happening in my life.
Right.
You only start to create a field where more magic is possible.
Totally. I think you and I are dissecting this a lot in business. I think you and I are having these conversations where we're really looking at, can you create something really powerful and really big and really successful by the industry standard using a different frequency, being in a different way. And it hasn't actually been done to the degree where books are written about it. And there's so many examples. I think we are the examples right now. And we haven't come to the full other end. We're just in experimentation right now.
Well, I would say we're a little further than experimentation.
That's true.
Like,
maybe
you know, like I would give you yourself and me a little more credit in that, like,
true.
Because, you know, the metrics that maybe success is tracked on doesn't fully encompass all the metrics that we are valuing. That's true. You know, like if we're valuing harmony and health, and if we're valuing cohesion, like, you know, taking things slower in business to value employee well-being or employee self-love, like whatever it is, like allows that. I mean, like we can come back to tangible. Like actually I had this conversation with a mentor of mine recently, like, you know, like, so Liberate is building a company to help people do the inner work.
Yes.
Right. Ultimately, as a result of doing that, it's forcing all of us to do our inner work.
Absolutely.
Right. So like our entire team has triggers show up. And when triggers show up, what do? We don't push them under the rug. We can't, because that would be out of integrity. We have to invite it in. We have to sit with it. We have to unpack it. We have to create safe spaces to have the conversations, to be in the conflict, to move through it. We have to take our own medicine. And sometimes that pulls away from productivity.
Wow.
That pulls away from us being able to do something. If there's someone in a deep trigger, knowing that we can't not be with it. Right? Like, and so we have to create a safe space for that. And that pulls away from deadlines, and we have OKRs and things we're trying to hit, and this very structured, masculine hustle way of getting something done that has worked. And I'm not saying it's not something we're using, but it's been interesting for me to be like, okay, like now that we have this awareness, if we zoom out and let's say we create the space where it's like a week, where we literally, for this specific individual, we create the space for them to do their work. And we honor that and we allow it. I zoom out and be like, okay, like I may not be able to see the ROI on that this quarter. Maybe this quarter is a slowing down. Maybe we miss an important launch. Maybe something gets shifted. But when I think of the 20-year horizon of this employee's loyalty to the brand, the company, what we're doing, because we valued their internal state, how can or the amount of devotion they're going to pour into the mission?
How would you feel though if you've poured into this individual, gave them space, and then they turn on you and go to another company?
So that's a beautiful question.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to that. Right. But like, I've been really tuning into, like, for me, the entire game has become energy.
Yeah, it is all energy.
Everything's energy, right? So like, if I feel stuck energy in a system, I feel like my role as a leader is to unkink the energy.
Yep.
Right. So whether that energy gets unkinked and it's something that allows for our pipes to flow better, or if something gets unkinked and that person leaves and goes into another place, ultimately something got unkinked.
Yeah.
Right? And we're allowing for the spaciousness. And that comes back to the trust in a greater plan, and trusting that expanding our energy and continuing to lighten the load across the entire system is actually what is required in this next paradigm of leadership.
It's interesting.
And so I don't know the right answer.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would feel.
Yeah.
I'm sure I would feel hurt.
Yeah.
I'm sure I would feel, all my triggers show up around betrayal or abandonment.
But then you might just pull back and be like, okay, what person do I want here?
And maybe that's an opportunity for me then to continue refining my blueprint, my North Star.
Use your manifesting skills and get someone better.
And that's the beautiful part. There's no loss here.
Yeah.
But to me, I really feel like coming back to like, if I root down in my heart, what is like, and there's no right or wrong.
Right.
Like, I don't feel like I'm really operating from a right or wrong paradigm anymore.
Right.
It's more like what feels the most true.
Right.
And if this person, this human being who is here for some reason in front of me, and there's this thing showing up, the most true thing we can do
is address it.
Is to address it.
Wow. You're a kind person. You really are.
I mean, I'm not perfect. It's not something I would say that I'm like fully embodied. But it's a real time.
I'm like, get over it. Let's go. I'm just kidding.
Well, it's like no, like, and I'm not gonna say I haven't been that either, right? Like, I'm not gonna say that I haven't had that tendency.
Yeah.
And I don't know the right answer.
Yeah.
I don't have the answers yet, right?
Yeah,
I'm still too in it. I'm too in the phase of building.
Right.
But when I zoom out and I think about, where we're headed as a collective,
right,
and what's happening right now in the collective, what we've had isn't working.
Yep.
And
I think you are creating a new path. I think you are.
Yeah. And so are you. Like, this whole idea of manifesting with ease, like, that to me is a new paradigm of leadership, because it's actually saying we can choose a timeline that's simpler, easier, more profitable, less expensive, less harmful, and having the courage to dream that.
Yeah.
That's big, Danette.
Yeah. I mean, we're both doing it. I'm proud of us.
Yeah.
I'm proud of us. Actually, you're like the person I talk to about this. Not everybody's on the same thought process. Or if they are, they're not really going as deep as I haven't gone this deep.
What is the resistance you get met with? Or do you feel like you'd be met with?
With what? If I talk about it?
If you talk about this in conventional business settings or in conventional creator settings.
I wouldn't care if I got met with any resistance. I think that it's hard sometimes I mean, maybe I'm speculating. Maybe it's not hard for anyone to grasp. I'm not sure, because I haven't been asked to speak on it necessarily. It's interesting. I've been asked to speak at a lot of business conferences, but they always ask, because back in the day, probably when you actually knew who I was, the big thing was sales copy. And sales, like, you would hire a really expensive copywriter to write your sales copy, and then people would buy your product based off the sales copy. Then Facebook Live came in, and I started doing Facebook Live, speaking straight from my heart, thinking about the woman I was speaking to, really wanting to connect to her and connect to a solution for her. So I would serve on it, and then I would sell, and we were blowing up. Our business 10x'd just from these videos. So you can imagine I was getting so many offers to speak on, because it just obliterated copies. Like, no one was even reading the copy. They were just clicking the link and buying. And, that turned into a $40 million business from Facebook Lives. Wow. And so, of course, companies, Danette, what are you doing? How are you doing it? What's your angle with the video? Like, how are you structuring your video? Like, they want, I think, in business, we like 1, 2, 3, 4. We like things to have a funnel. We like things to have a system, and they want to be. And I was like, you have to speak to the heart. I don't have a plan. I'm not. And Craig was trying to tell them, she does not map out what she's going to say. And so I was already teaching it, but it was very hard because mostly it was a bunch of men, I'm just going to say, because their brains work just slightly different and they've been trained to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And they were like, you can't tell me you grew your business this much from heart, from just speaking to the woman's heart. You just have the trust factor. I'm like, yes, and this is the new way for copy. This is the new way for business. And if you grab a hold of this and then implement other things, you can go so far in funnels. But if you speak to the heart, you're going to go infinitely farther.
Yeah. Right there.
Yeah.
Is next paradigm leadership. Because what you're tuning into is the fact that we're all connected to the same heartbeat.
Yeah, we are.
We are connected to the same song. And when we can tap into that song, we access the abundance and the support of everything around us. And that makes complete sense to me. It makes complete sense to those that have been on an awakening path, that have connected to God, that can feel the interconnectedness of all beings, of all things, that really, truly only requires, and it actually requires the heart to be open, right? And to even understand that. And I feel that so deeply. Like, and when you're speaking, I'm like, yes, 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 yes. Like, you are so on point with everything even I'm experiencing right now. Like, I don't feel like Liberate's the first company or project I've ever been a part of that I don't feel like I'm building. I am growing it. I'm stewarding it.
Yeah. You're changing the language.
I'm allowing it. I might be a leader that is orchestrating, that is taking diligent action, that is setting an example, that is inspiring, and I'm not actually doing anything. And there's a shift in that languaging even.
The shift in the languaging is everything, actually. And it starts a little bit with that, because the body operates and the energy operates based off our words, thoughts, words, and then feelings.
Totally. And I actually feel like there's a quantum shift, right? Like that, because when you're playing from this space, the heart is unpredictable. And it shows up most in our relationships, right? Like the same things that made you successful in business, which is normally a logical, like left brain, very much like analytical mind that followed formulas, that you did best practices to get you somewhere. If you try to take those same principles and apply them in relating and dating, you're going to be met with so much struggle.
But you think about these dating lectures or dating coaches, they're trying to give you that same thing.
And that's the piece that's, well, and
I think that's why they're struggling.
Exactly. That's my point. Like, and I mean, just from my own journey, like unraveling in the dating department took a lot of unlearning.
Yeah.
I had to unlearn being in the mind, and I had to learn to be present.
Yeah.
And be attuned. And that is a scary thing to do for someone who has trauma in the body, or who is disconnected from their heart, who has never had a paradigm of navigating these uncertain waters. But I really feel like that is actually like relational mastery and leadership. Next paradigm leadership is about actually developing the sensitivity of the heart and the sensitivity. And I feel like for men, it's a lot harder. I don't know why. Like, I just feel like women, in at least most of the women,
I think it's just been more embraced to be sensitive as a woman and less embraced. I think men are just as sensitive.
Totally. And I feel like I'm incredibly attuned.
Yep.
But it took a lot of deprogramming from all the stories around how I need to be as a man.
Absolutely.
And I think that's preventing, I believe, this next quantum of creation and creative power. Like, we can create some really epic stuff that is a win-win-win-win-win-win-win for everyone.
I know.
And it's not extractive.
Yep.
You know, and I think it requires us to really listen to what's not here and trust, back to the trust factor of trusting in that way. And that's and that's then shifting our relationship to control, which is the ultimate spiritual dance. You know, I'm curious about your relationship to control. Like, how has that shifted over time, and is it still something that you are working with, or
I think the gift that came to me in my life was losing all control. Like honestly, I think it was divorce, my family being really frustrated about me leaving out of religion, then them not talking to me, losing my son. All those things just forced me to be like, I have no control. And I think that's why it is a gift. It's a gift because unless you're met with it, you won't really know the power of no control. And so those things all hitting like a bomb at once was like, I actually created it, so I am in control. But actually, I want my child and I want my family to love me, and they're upset, and I've lost and I can't get it back. So then you realize there's some things I can control, but I also have to watch my choices leading up to it, because I actually believe, and I have no victim around it now. At the time, I was like, I started learning about creation and how we're creating. I was like, I created me marrying this person. Then I created this scenario with the loss of my son. I know I created it. And then I created this with my family because I never stood up for myself the whole time. So of course I'm going to create this. So then you start to go, I'm creating it. And it's not that I have to have control of everything, but I feel like I am somewhat in control, but I'm not grasping. It's a different type of control.
In control without grasping, to me, is just recognizing your creative potential.
Yeah, I feel like I am creating with an energy for sure.
Yeah, it's like creating without the attachment. Mm-hmm. And that to me is manifesting in many ways. Like I think that's where it gets playful.
Yeah.
It can be playful where you start to play with your creative potential and see what's possible. And you start to expand your horizons. And you start to bring in prayer. Like, one of the things that I've been really sitting with is, can I pray for the people in my life? And the same way that I manifest something small for me, can I pray for them?
Mm-hmm. You can.
And shift outcomes for them.
Ooh, but they have to also want it.
Totally. But no, I guess it's just the other day, I was in a prayer. I was feeling so much gratitude for just what I was experiencing in my life. And I was just like, wow, this is incredible. And then I thought about my parents, and that always breaks my heart, because I sometimes, for the longest time, I felt really guilty that I felt so good all the time when I had friends and family in my life that just felt stuck.
Yeah.
And no matter how much I tried to show up, it just felt like they were just swimming. And I just sat in this deep tears. I was tears flowing. I was in gratitude. And then I just kind of let out a prayer. And I was just may my father experience some level of deep love, deep devotional love. Yeah. And that was it. It wasn't oh, this must happen. It was in this way.
Yeah, it's a well wish.
It was a well wish. And I've been really practicing being in more of that frequency of just feeling the devotion for my loved ones, and letting that actually be coming from a space of so much gratitude for what I get to experience.
Yeah.
And instead of it being guilt, which I think was a program that was running for a long time around
Oh my gosh, I have something to share. This is so good. This is so good you do this. And I had a mantra. Both these things I'm going to share with you were not mine. They were taught to me. So there was a mantra that I was taking on 10, 11 years ago when my life was crumbling, loss of my, actually my son passed away longer than that now, but it was just so much chaos. And I heard this phrase, I'm increasing in money, happiness, and success. And as I do so, I'm inspiring others to do the same. So I used to say this all the time, because it was always I don't want to just increase in this on my own. I want to inspire others to do the same. So I would say that mantra. And then another thing that I do every single day, is I will say 3 gratitudes, 3 things I'm excited for, and I'll say it as in the affirmative, and I start my day this, and then 3 well wishes. So I'm sending, once I've stirred up all this energy for myself, I've said 3 gratitudes, now I'm saying my 3 excitements of what I'm calling in, then I send it out, 3 well wishes. So I will name somebody that I'm sending something to them energetically.
And there's something so powerful about...
Yeah, so you're already doing this. That's what's crazy. I've learned it, and you're just doing it naturally. I always.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm
you.
doing it naturally. I think I've felt very inspired by, like, I'm a sponge of just.
I'm inspired by you.
Well,
because I feel like you're just like this walking Buddha. Honestly, I feel like you're a walking person from Egypt. I'll just speak it truth. I feel like there's so much wisdom coursing in you, whatever your upbringing was or whatever you remember in this timeline that brings us here on this couch. I feel there's so much more in you that was already coursing through your blood that you've already known, and so you naturally do it, or you naturally exude it. And I think you're catching up to this like magnificence that's like coursing through you. It's true.
Oh, Danette, that's like the sweetest thing I've heard in a very long time. That was
it's
really,
true.
Thank you.
And it's like fascinating for me to witness, because I'm like, how can he not see this? But then I'm like, whoa, maybe lots of us are not seeing this. But I think we all have different finites. I think yours comes from deep wisdom of Egypt.
Oh, wow. I have never been to Egypt, and I've been called to spend time there.
Well, it doesn't have the same frequency of what you're holding, because you're holding ancient Egypt energy, I feel.
Wow. I fully receive that. I mean, I the way it shows up for me is in just deep love. I think I'm connecting more and more to gratitude, frequency of generosity, and the frequency of devotion.
And not many people feel this and say this. Like, you're an anomaly.
But devotion to me feels like, devotion is such a, living with devotion feels like such a beautiful way to live your life. Like,
isn't it fun?
It's like devotion to self, devotion to mission or a greater purpose, devotion to a relationship, a person, devotion to a dog, whatever. It's just like just living in that frequency of devotion just feels like there's so much possibility. It's like there's a reciprocal nature to that. When you live in devotion, then you feel the devotion it all comes back. It's like the thing, like, when you are living in gratitude, like, you have more things to be grateful for. It's the same. It's like it makes so much sense from like a mathematical, if I got just mathematical with it, like the law of like just like reciprocity and the infinity sign, like
totally. You can see the equations if you were to like fill into that statement.
Totally. Like, it makes so much sense. And maybe it makes sense because I've now gotten enough data, and you've seen enough cycles, like we were talking about in the beginning, where you've just seen enough cycles happen, and you're like, okay, like, this must be true, at least from my lived experience. And then when we have conversations, and it's like, wow, this is also happening for you in your own way. And then I'm like, it validates it, and then it gives more power to the prayer.
Yeah.
And then the prayer just takes a life of its own. And sometimes I just feel like I don't even recognize how things are happening. I think I'm just living in a consistent prayer.
I think that's a statement. I'm living in a consistent prayer.
Yeah, and
my life is about devotion.
When I feel, like I said, infinitely grateful that I have people in my life that are inspiring that. Like,
but you created that.
So I invited in these angels and these beings, and
yeah,
and so I am creating it. So I'm not going to cop out there.
You are.
And I'm not going to cop out there. But Danette, like, truly, like, this is why I'm so inspired by you. Like, I mean, you are someone who I have just like, you just see people. Like, and I want to name that because, like, the way you have seen me consistently over the years has given me so much confidence to step into more of myself. And I know you've done this with many human beings. In fact, I had a conversation like with Adam Roa about that. Like, just like how, like, you even, like, I remember when we first met him, like, you were just like, this dude's the real deal.
Yeah.
And you saw him, and then, like, for him to be doing what he's doing now and the way he's doing it, like, I've just seen you do this with so many humans. You just see
their
field.
Yeah.
beyond who they are,
Yeah.
showing up in the moment, and and then you lift them up. You give so many. You never give a hand out. No. You give hand ups.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You're like, I see you rise with me, and I see you do this with all the women you support. And I've just seen you over the years, and I'm like so infinitely grateful that I get to experience your gifts, and I feel so grateful that you are who you are.
Thank you.
And even through the transformations and the cycles, and they might feel like there's polarity and there's like, who am I becoming? And I'm just like, I have so much trust in who you're becoming because who you really are is never going to die.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, whatever we're thinking of or whatever we're dreaming of or whatever we think we see already exists, or we wouldn't be able to think of it or dream of it. It already exists. So it's like just being with that knowing allows us to chill out a little. Just take a big deep breath and be like, I'm creating this because I'm creating the dream. I'm creating the dream. The dream already exists.
And both poles are true, because whatever we're creating right now is inside of God's dream.
Yeah.
Like this entire shared collective dream that just seems to be magically unfolding, and it will continue unfolding after we are gone, the same way it was unfolding before we were born.
Yeah, totally.
Like this whole, it's one of my favorite things about being in nature.
Yes.
And being by the ocean. Like when I see the waves crash over and over and over again, doesn't matter if I'm sleeping,
they're gonna
doesn't matter if I'm working, they're going to be crashed. They were crashing before I was born. They'll be crashing after I'm gone. And it gives me that zoomed out perspective of just remembering that all of this is in harmony. It's happening. And as I have incredible potential to create life on earth and create and manifest my life's deepest desires. And look at all of this. It's already perfect.
I know. Amazing.
I know.
Amazing.
Oh my God, you're so fun. So, Danette, what's like the most exciting thing that you are offering into the world right now that anyone listening can be aware of, that's truly lighting up your soul from the inside out?
I'm in a new phase because I'm zooming out right now because I've created a lot of businesses. I mean, I've created 3 different businesses, a superfood company, a women's, nutrition detox community, a bunch of fitness programs, wrote books, and has this coaching business. And now a podcast, and now this like new show that's coming out. I feel like, and I have this dream on my heart, which I've shared with you, which is around music, and that will happen. I have no doubt. But I'm also not marching very fast towards it. And I've been in introspection because I've always been a marcher. I'm always going really fast. When I see something, I go. And it's not that I'm not going, but I've noticed my speed is not the same as my normal speed. And so I've been asking myself, am I excited? Am I scared? Why? Because I'm used to a certain speed. And I'm sensing when I do my soul time every morning that Spirit's like, I want to teach you a new way. Because you've operated in a go mode, which is nothing wrong. I actually really love getting into action. I really love working on something and creating things like in physical. But it's asking me to almost study because it's fun, but not study because you said you were going to study 15 to 20 minutes about sound frequency and that you were going to work on the DJ track for this amount of time. Why don't you do it only when you feel the desire to do it? And if you don't feel the desire for it, don't do it. And just see what comes because you've already put out the dream and the dream's already here. And then I've watched as other family stuff has come up that's requiring my attention a little bit, but not too much. I don't want to put too much attention on it. And so what's exciting me ultimately is this, it's kind of an experiment. I like watching and seeing what happens with life. I'm a curious person. So I'm like, okay, I understand this dance with manifesting. If I just pull back and I've already laid down the chips, the dream. And sometimes I play with the chips, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I put in effort, sometimes I don't. Is the dream still going to create itself without so much effort in each of the chips? And that's fun for me right now. So that's exciting me because I'm like, yeah, I'm getting calls about doing gigs that I didn't reach out to them. So I'm just watching and observing, and that's exciting me a little bit. And it's also sometimes not exciting because I'm like, I don't like always surrendering in that way. I'm not used to it as much as I am in the let's go after this. I'm a manifesting generator. I like to work a little too.
Totally. Well, there's the brilliance of allowing, again, you're shifting into a new paradigm of creation that, and what I'm finding, at least in hearing everything you're saying, it's like what you are birthing into the world now is far beyond anything you've done in the past.
Absolutely.
Therefore, it requires a greater hand in creation. Because if you did it, you would actually be creating from the consciousness. Like it's like in order to birth something that is beyond your consciousness, you have to actually access support beyond your consciousness.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So there's an excitement there that I feel around this because it doesn't take away the reality that you must create, but it also allows for you to expand your creatorship.
Yeah. And I think in expansion is rest. There's been a lot of, I just read this thing because I feel like there's a lot of giving to me. Like I was telling you about the polarity. There's dark stuff happening, but it's not really, it's not happening to me. It's not like I'm sick in my body or there's something like on me. It's just a knowing of something, right? That's dark. I feel the universe is like, if I gave you a gift or I gave you that compliment and I really meant it and you were to be like, thanks, Danette, or no, you're too kind. That's not really me. I might not want to give you another gift or I might not want to give you another compliment because you didn't really fill me back up. And the universe is the same. And I feel like the universe right now is like, can I just give you so many gifts right now, Danette? Can I let you sip on 8 glasses of the best champagne? And can I let you get upgraded to the presidential suites when you travel every single time? And can I show you about jumping timelines and let you do it and let it just feel good? Can you just be grateful for that? And can you just receive that right now? And that's where I'm at. And that's it almost, and it challenging that little girl and probably your little boy that would be like, I have to work for something. I shouldn't just get all this stuff.
It's so interesting. We want all this. We want all this abundance. We want all this beauty. We want everything. But we don't cultivate our capacity to receive it. And that's in the rest. It's in those periods of rest and receiving where we actually break open our capacity to actually hold all that we're here to hold. And who am I to tell God or higher power or universe, whatever you believe in, that this is the time I must have this?
Yeah.
If it shows up, who am I to say no?
I know.
And so there's this beautiful dance of, yes, knowing thyself and knowing where you're at and being confident, but then also surrendering and being like, all right, bring it in. I'll receive. I'll hold. I'll have.
And that's a game too. It's like, okay, playing with that game of I'll just receive without working a little bit.
Totally.
What happens from that?
Totally. It's
totally different.
It's a very different mindset. And I'm so grateful that I have you to talk to about it because sometimes I feel freaking crazy.
I think it's hard for some, we don't want to say it too much because then we're like, oh, I don't want to make someone feel bad that I'm receiving a lot.
Well, but I also don't want to take away from the amount of work we put in.
That is true. But what I'm creating now isn't going to feed off the work I did before. So it's a new...
Well, no, I mean the internal work.
That's true.
The prayer.
That's true.
The quality of the prayer has nothing to do with the things you've done.
That's true.
Right? The quality of the prayer is your practice, your daily practice, how you're keeping your energy clean.
That's
and you
true.
are cultivating your spaciousness.
Yeah,
that
I'm devoted
to me,
to that.
That to me is the real work, that then allows for the universe to bless you. Like, I don't actually feel like it has anything to do with how much we've accomplished.
Oh, this is interesting.
It's more of the quality.
The daily inner work practice.
Danette, I know very few people that devote themselves to their daily practice the way you do. And I am inspired. And I don't believe that it's a coincidence that you get to experience so much beauty. I really believe that. That's something I'm going to hold.
If anybody's on the fence on their morning practice, I'm telling you, whether it's made up or not, it's delicious. It's fun.
Oh my gosh. All right, Danette. Well, I have one last question for you. And everybody watching, listening to this will make all of Danette's contact and her social handles available for you to just follow her brilliance. But I have one last question for you. In the midst of everything you're doing, everywhere you've been, and everywhere you're going, what's one thing you do every single day to become a more grounded human being?
Two things. Every day I pray, and I say thank you every day. And two, I always touch a tree.
I just love you. I love you so much. I just love you. You're so great. This is so great. That's perfect. All right. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for just being you. All right, everybody. That's a wrap for this week's episode of Stay Grounded. I'm your host, Raj. This is your old friend, Danette. And from us, stay grounded. Chat soon.